Hey everybody. I want to take a few minutes here to walk you through a couple steps on Flex. I've had some questions roll in today, and I think the biggest thing we need to think about as we transition to this new Flex program is going to be that we can't use it exactly the way we use the spreadsheets, right? If you remember last year, we had all these spreadsheets, different tabs. It was arranged by homeroom. The students, you could quickly use a drop down. Um, but that became often an attendance nightmare. So we sought out, different flex schedulers to kind of help with the attendance piece. But I do also think that the scheduler, once we kind of rework how we view or how we use the program to quote unquote pool kids, I do think that we'll be able to figure that out. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen here. Um, I'm going to get started as if I would normally log into Flex. Okay, so we have our Flex scheduler here. I'm going to log in using the Google link. All right, so I am logged in here. Now, the way Flex works, it has for every student based on the groups that they're in, they have all these different options available to them every day during the time that we run these buck times, right? And so for a building wide view, right, we have buck time 6 through 8 that happens at 10:42. We have buck time 5 that happens at 12:35, and then we have this end of the period for 5th grade, end of the day period called exploration, right? So you see those three views. As Sean mentioned this morning, we're going to try to clean that up a little bit so you don't have access to all three if you don't need them. Okay, specialist, you're going to have all three because you're going to be in all of these at some point throughout the week. Okay, so as we go through this, understand that cutoff times, those are primarily for students. So what that means is at 8:42 on the day of that flex period. So let's say we run this live on Monday at 8:42, the students are not going to be able to make any changes themselves at that time for buck time 6-8. If they don't have anything selected, the system will automatically put them into sections and activities um, based on rosters that they are currently in, based on past preferences, past options that they've selected. I've been told that this auto assign feature is kind of a smart auto assign. So after a while, it'll put kids in different events or in places that they've been at before. But ultimately, it just makes sure that we have all of the seats filled, or all of the students are in a seat somewhere in a classroom. Okay. The cutoff time, as I said, there's three different times throughout the day. Now, as far as teachers go, you can still manually move students around after that cutoff. Okay. Obviously, the students are going to know when the cutoff is, right? And so as we work this into our system, whether this, if in grade 6 through 8, if, is sixth grade, if you're allowing them a minute to look at the end of period 2, maybe seventh and eighth grade, you have some time at the end of period 3 where you can say, hey, check out Flex, make sure you know where you're going when we move to that period. That's entirely up to you guys when you want to show them, but understand that if you make any change after 8:42, the students aren't going to know unless they log in. Okay, so we're going to have to share that with them. Question came up about for those that are absent. So the nice thing about this is if somebody, let's say, we preload these for the week, the kids get in there, and I'm going to use Brian Welsh as an example. Let's say Brian is absent on Tuesday. Okay, but he's got a full roster of kids. He's running a help desk. Maybe he's also got a club going on at that same time. What we can do is we can actually close those two activities, and then we can auto assign those students into other sections, right? Other activities. So we have enough seats. We have more than enough seats available for the number of students that are going to be rotating through. So what that means is we won't necessarily have covers during buck time. Those students will just get rerouted somewhere. Now that works in buck time 6-8, buck time 5, and also that exploration period. So as far as subs are concerned, they really won't need to have access to flex unless we're really in dire need of bodies, and people to be able to house kids. So as far as people being absent, it's automatically. I mean, we will have to trigger it, but we have the ability to kind of close an activity and then disperse those students wherever they need to go. All right. So if we look into kind of getting into my view here, okay, all of these in the default activity list, you don't see this. You see the activities that you are assigned. So as you can see, we've had lots of people that have put in different clubs, different activities that they want to offer. The question that I'm being asked is when can I offer a club during, which day and which block? Essentially that flex matrix that Krista created, if you are available and it is not your remediation day or your second priority day, you can host a club, right? But understand, we still need to offer a number of seats that's as close to what we're already offering. So if you're put down for a workroom and that is 22 seats, I can't all of a sudden, the club, we can shift it slightly, but I still got to make sure that we have enough space for all the kids to go on that day, right? So there's some flexibility there, but understand, right? That's really what we care about. Obviously, I'm excited that you guys are offering these, but we just want to make sure that kids are accounted for, they're where they should be, right? And if we do this right, Flex will take care of some of that legwork for us. So you can see all these different activities. And again, on your view, as I kind of switch over here, so I'll tag Welsh into this. Notice he doesn't have the default activities list. He just has the activities list. And what is listed is these are the activities that have already been assigned for you. Okay. There's two things to know. Help desk, think of that as remediation, right? So that is your traditional pool. These are kids that are either asking to come to your room for help or you are specifically pulling to your room to help. A workroom, think of it as like a study hall. Anyone can elect to choose the workroom. So that means anyone in eighth grade. So any eighth grade student can get on there and select Brian Welsh, workroom 8. Okay. The same goes for like a math teacher, workroom 8. That's every kid in eighth grade. That doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to be students that you have in your classes, but it will only be students in the grade level that you teach. Okay. To flip that, the help desk, let's say for math, that grouping is only going to be the kids that you have enrolled in your courses. So if you're an Algebra 1 teacher, you teach, let's say you teach 2 sections of Algebra 1, just talking about Courtney, you teach 2 sections of Algebra 1, you have 1 section of Pre-Algebra B, you're only getting, or let me rephrase that, only the students that you have enrolled in your courses will see the help desk for you. They won't see Kelly Royce, right? Kelly's students will only see Kelly. Okay. There is some flexibility if you guys want to change that, but that's kind of how I set it up to begin with. Now, the big question everyone's trying to figure out is how can I pool kids? Okay. And so if we click into here, let's go to schedule. Let's pull up next week. This is the first thing scheduled. Okay. So some of you have found the plus add. Okay. Plus add can get kind of messy because essentially what you're doing is you are overriding all of the systems and all of the groups that have been in place for you to add any kids that you want. So I'm going to show you how we want you to run these, remediation groups, these intervention groups. Understand that like you're going to have to be more active with how your groups are rostered, but once you get in the habit of doing it, I think you'll have no issue. So I'm gonna back out of Brian's here, and then I'm gonna show you how I would go about setting your pool groups. Okay. All right. So let's go back into activities. First thing I want to do is I want to go to students and I want to go to groups. Okay. So let's say, for example, I want to create. Let's say I have 6 kids that I want to pool. Identified that I needed help. I would go to new group. Okay, and I would label it. Let's say social studies. Help 8. Right. So what that means is that you've created this group, and I'm going to tag a name on it. Okay. You can choose a description if you want. You don't have to. The access type. Now you're getting my view, so I have to choose this. I would create if I'm creating a group for you that you're going to use, I would do shared. What that means is I am sharing my group with someone else, meaning that whoever I put down as the additional adults, those people are going to have access to change who's in the group. Basically, this is for teams. If you guys, particularly those of you that have partner teachers, math, ELA, if you want to create separate groups, right? You have, your accelerated group, you have your remediation group, and you only want to get those students during the buck time, you can go ahead and you can create you get the idea, right? You would put Welsh in there. There we go. All right. And so you make sure it's active. And then from here, right, this is where you would start punching in your students. So, let's say I'm going to have Chase Kissel. I'm going to have, we'll keep with the Chases, Condicure. Let's say we were going Colton Eiler. Okay. Let's say those 3 students, for whatever reason, they are in our social studies help group. So I would go ahead and I would click add. Okay, now I can go back and I can adjust that. But so what you did is you created a manual group. So now that you have a group created, then we would go back to our activity list. Okay. I would look up my help desk when it loads. When it loads. All right. So there's Brian, and I'm going to update this master activity. Okay. Now I have just by default, I have preloaded every student that Brian has in his classes as a default group. Now notice you cannot create activity that is required without adding a group. Okay. So even optional, we would still need to have some type of group selected. So this is how I would do this. So on help desk days, we have you capped at 15. I would create a separate activity. All right. So let me back out of here. Come on. All right. So I'm going to create for Brian a second activity. And I'm going to say social studies, 8 pools. Okay. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to select academic. Now, here's the difference. This is no longer an optional activity. This is a required activity. And so I am going to select required. It's already preloaded for the room that Brian is. I'm going to go to my group. I'm going to remember what I called that group, which was Social Studies Help 8. And then you'll see that these students have already been populated. That is the students that we've put in the group. I would then go ahead and add this. And there we go. Okay. Now you're like, man, that's a lot of work. I got to update two things. You don't. Okay. Now notice, right? There's 3 people in that room because those are the 3 that I pulled. What you do, let's say if you're going to change these, every couple days or whatever, once a cycle, whenever remediation day is, you're going to go back to that group that you just created. You're going to edit. And let's say one of these students, for whatever reason, isn't in there anymore. And I'm going to add one of the Turks. Update. Now, what that does when you update your group is it automatically updates the activity roster. So think about it. If you keep your groups updated, your activities are going to show up correctly. Now look, right? So we have Kondikure, we have Eiler, and then Kissel is no longer in there, and we have one of the Turks in that. Okay. That is the best way to go about updating your pools. Okay. Now, I did a lot of this work ahead of time to just get you guys in a situation where it's going to be as close to ready if you didn't touch anything. This is where you guys are going to have the ability to start to change, right? And so you have to think about the number. If on the flex matrix it says on a remediation day, we need you to have 15 kids, that means that 15 kids most likely are going to end up filling your room. So if you want, right, that pool group, if you only update it for 3, understand that you're going to have 12 optional students select into your room. Okay? If you decide to come up with 15 students on that group, that pool group, well, then you don't have to worry about any other kids jumping into it, right? And the nice thing about this is on my end, I can schedule as many activities in your room at the same time. So like we are allowing students, right? We're allowing students the option to jump into our room if they need it on a help desk, while also giving you, the teacher, the ability to pool students on that same day. Essentially, we just have to create 2 activities. One is a required activity, which means that the group that I create, they are only going to yours. Okay. They are not able to choose any of the other options during that flex period. So we create an activity that is a required activity. The roster we input from our original group, that's the one that's going to show up. And then we also have to adjust the number of available seats in our optional activity help desk, right? So those are the 2 main things that we need to kind of get used to be able to do that. Now, like I said, that plus add, it does allow you to do that, but it really screws a lot of things up. Now, I'm going to ask Sean tomorrow when he meets with us to kind of go through some of the plus add, the pros and cons of that. I just know that, from talking with him, some other schools didn't really lay groundwork for plus add, and it creates kind of a little bit of a tug of war nightmare. Okay, so we're gonna be cautious with how we use that moving forward. I think that's about it for now. I'm sure I will come up with more questions as we go, but that's just very basic how to get in and do creating a group and then also attaching that group to your activity. Thanks, folks.